right, so today we're going to kick off our botanical art making series by creating a flower press. And this is just kind of a small little travel flower press. I love collecting nature for my art making. And so I have several of these little ones, and I have like big sizes and tiny ones. And I feel like you can never have too many. So we're going to talk today about, we're going to walk through making our own little travel flower press. And then we're going to kind of talk about some tips and tricks on pressing flowers and leaves. Now, I have a couple things here that are just examples of different flowers and things that you can press. And we're going to kind of go through this whole process. Pressing something that is flat, a single item, or something that has several leaves to it, how to kind of spread that out to make sure everything gets pressed. We'll talk about pressing tiny flowers and how to press really big flowers too. So we're going to kind of go through all of that. But just wanted to kind of show a little example there before we get started. And then we'll create our flower press. So the first supply I want to talk about is going to be our kind of framework, right? So in my example here, I have two pieces of wood that I'm using as the top and bottom. You can use some wooden squares. You can use like a lot of things. One of the things that I've used too is I've gone to the Dollar Tree and I've just gotten coasters, and that works well too. If you're at like a home supply store, you can get tile. You can use metal plate. Like there's a lot of things that you can use for this part. This is just kind of what we're sandwiching everything between. So it's the top and the bottom of our flower press. Like I said, I'm going to be using some wooden squares today that I found at the dollar store, but you can use basically whatever you have around you as long as it's a hard surface. Something like cardboard doesn't necessarily work for this one because it is a little flexible. So you want something that is kind of stiff. So I'm going to use the wooden squares today. The next thing we need is going to be our cardboard. We will need cardboard for this. One of the things that's really helpful when it comes to a flower press is using cardboard to kind of separate your layers. The benefit of using cardboard is that it adds pressure, but it gives it a cushion. So it doesn't completely press it. It kind of presses it slowly. When you press something too fast, sometimes you get a little like leaking from the plant. The moisture in the plant just kind of comes out, and it can like change how our flower or leaf presses. And so having something that is a little, gives a little is good. And you can use, I think this, yeah, an Amazon box. I just cut it up. So it doesn't have to be anything specific, like a special piece of cardboard. Literally any type of cardboard will work. But we'll need some cardboard. We'll also need some wax paper or some parchment paper. I'm using some parchment paper here. I've just got a few small pieces. We're going to cut it up. But you can use either wax paper or parchment paper. Another item that you can use instead of wax paper or parchment paper is watercolor paper. That's also another option. I will say the difference between using watercolor paper and something like parchment paper or wax paper is that your watercolor paper will actually take on some of the color from your plant you're pressing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can get some really nice color on your watercolor paper. But the thing to keep in mind is that with our wax paper or parchment paper, it has that kind of layer on it that protects the paper from soaking up the pigment, whereas watercolor paper will actually just soak up the pigment. So that's the big difference. This one will take on some of the color, this one won't. So I usually use wax paper or parchment paper, but watercolor paper does work as well. So then the next thing we need is going to be rubber bands. Now I use rubber bands because it's really easy to just like wrap it around, but you can also use other things. If you have twine, you can use that. If you have like a giant clip thing like this, you can use that too. Anything that will help kind of squeeze your flower press works. Rubber bands, I think, are the easiest one. Okay, so these are our basic supplies for creating our flower press. So we're using the wooden pieces for our top and bottom. We're using cardboard pieces to kind of separate the layers. And then we're using the parchment paper or the wax paper to kind of protect the flowers or leaves as they're being pressed, as they're drying. And then the rubber bands to close it. Now, the last thing I want to kind of talk about supply-wise are our natural materials. Now, if you don't have natural materials with you today, that's okay. That's okay. We're going to walk through how to do some of these different types, from big flowers to flat flowers, leaves, all that. We're going to kind of walk through that together. So you don't have to have that with you. We will talk about it though. And we need scissors. That's another supply I forgot to mention, scissors. So let's jump in. To start off, we're going to cut our cardboard down to fit our top and bottom, right? Now you can measure it. I think this is a 4-inch square. You can measure yours if you want. I think the easiest way is to just trace it. So that's what I do. So I will take my little flower press here, and I'm just going to kind of take my little marker and just draw a little square. I'm going to do about 5 pieces. So if you have your flower press supplies with you, feel free to go ahead and cut your cardboard squares. And you can see it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just doing like some lines here to give me a general idea. It needs to be about the size of your cover. And I'm going to do about 5 squares. One of the things I want to mention is that for flower pressing, you need a piece of cardboard at the bottom and the top, and then you have your layers in between. So by doing 5 cardboard squares, I'm able to have 4 of my parchment papers, right? And that'll make sense when we start the building, but that's why I did an odd number here instead of doing the even number. But you can make as many cardboard squares as you want. So what we're going to do is start off after we've drawn it, we're going to cut. So I'm just going to take my scissors and just kind of go through and cut my squares. Now, again, one of the things that I like about this is that it does not have to be perfect. If you have a shaky hand or if you have kind of a wonky edge on your cardboard, know that you don't have to trim it. You can see this one here has some like angle to it. That's okay. I'm not going to trim it. It's fine the way it is, which I like that. So I'm just going to take a moment and cut my cardboard out. If you have your cardboard drawn out, go ahead and cut those pieces up too. Cardboard is a little hard on your hands to cut. So if you want to use like an X-Acto knife, that also works. That may feel a little easier. But whatever feels good to you is okay. We just want to trim that cardboard so it's sort of the size of our top and bottom. And this is one nice thing about this process too, is that, I can start off with 5 cardboard squares. And as I do more flower pressing, I can add more squares to it. So right now, my little flower press I was showing as a demo, I have what, 1, 2, 3, 8 layers here. And sometimes I add more layers, sometimes I do fewer layers. So it really does not matter how many layers of cardboard you have. You just want to make sure it's still small enough that you can either wrap a rubber band around or twine to. So just want to kind of throw that in there while we're cutting. So I have my 5 cardboard squares here. After we do our cardboard pieces, the next thing we want to do is cut our parchment paper or wax paper. Now, you can either cut like individual squares, or you can fold them and kind of do a card shape. I like folding them. It just feels a little easier to me. And so that's what I'm going to do here. But no, you don't have to fold them. So I'm going to start off. I have 4 little strips of wax paper, parchment paper. And when I kind of pulled it out of that roll, I just cut little strips of it, tore it in little strips. So I'm layering all of my parchment paper, my wax paper, on top of each other. I'm just kind of straightening them up. And then I'm just going to fold them all in half, right? So I have a fold on one side and then the loose papers on all the other sides. Okay. So I have 4 pieces of wax paper, 4 strips that I've layered on top of each other, and I'm going to fold them in half. And so what I'm going to do, and I'm going to pull out my flower press here just to kind of show. So what we're doing is we're cutting our wax paper so that it has a fold. Right. And that one, I've found that that one just feels easier to work with because you don't have two separate pieces that you're having to keep up with. It's attached. So when you put your flower in, you can just open it up, put that flower in, and then press it. Right? So that's why I do the fold. Now, the next step after we have it layered and folded is I'm going to pull my cardboard piece out and just kind of line that up. Now, again, it does not have to be exact, which is nice. We can just make it. We don't have to worry about making it all the same. But I'm just going to use my cardboard square because I know the cardboard square is the same size as my top and bottom, and it's going to make my parchment paper the same size as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm lining my cardboard up against the fold in my parchment paper. Right? So I'm putting the cardboard against the fold. And then I'm going to take just a marker. You can use a pencil or a pen, whatever you have. And I'm just going to draw that little square here. So again, I lined that cardboard up to the fold and then traced it. So it gave me this kind of square shape. Once I have that mark, I can cut it. So again, I'm just going to kind of walk through this one more time. I have four pieces, four little strips that I've laid on top of each other. And then I'm folding it in half. And where that fold is, I'm using my cardboard square that I measured already, and I'm putting the cardboard right against that fold, and I'm tracing it. So when I cut this out, I have four strips that are the same size. So I'm going to go ahead and cut mine here. And again, one of the really nice things is that it doesn't have to be exact. I know I keep mentioning that, but there's something that feels really freeing about it not having to be exact. So once I have that cut, I can separate them. And you see it kind of has that crease, so it folds. Okay. So I have my 5 cardboard pieces that I cut the same size as my top and bottom. And then I have my 4 parchment pieces or wax paper that I have folded and then cut to match those sizes. And so we've prepped all our supplies now. Literally, this is all we need to make the flower press. It feels so like easy, right? Just a few pieces. So to layer up our flower press, what I'm going to do is start off by taking one of the pieces, my top, my bottom. I'm going to take one piece and use that as my bottom piece. So we're going to kind of do some layering. We're going to be making kind of a flower press lasagna here. So we're starting with our wooden piece or a coaster. And then we're going to take a cardboard piece, put that on top, and then one of our wax papers or parchment papers. I'm going to put that next. And then another piece of cardboard. So what we're doing is we're sandwiching the parchment paper between our cardboard pieces, right? So I've got my cardboard piece. I'm going to take another wax paper and put that on top. And then add another cardboard piece, another wax paper, another cardboard piece, my last wax paper, and my last cardboard piece. So we've sandwiched it, right? We've got a little layer. We have our bottom, cardboard, parchment paper, cardboard, parchment paper, cardboard, parchment paper, all the way up. Once we put our last cardboard on, we can put our lid on. And then this is our flower press. Now you can see again, like they're not exactly the same size, and that's okay. We want them to be generally the same size. So with this, one of the things we can do now is put that rubber band around it, and there's our flower press, right? So basic material, just cutting it all the same size, and you can make it any size you want. I've had scrap paper or scrap pieces of wood that I found, long pieces of wood. And like I said, this is one that I use for a flower press often because they're really pretty. You know, maybe you go to a dollar store and you find some coasters and then you're like, oh, this is nice. The benefit of doing something with wood is that you can add embellishments to it. Or even the tile that you get at the home supply store. So here I did some stamps, but you can do decoupage on top of it. You can do paint on top of it. You can really have some fun with the decoration too when you use something like the wood. It kind of opens the door for that. So there is our flower press. I want to spend just a little time talking about some different tips and kind of walking through how we can press flowers. And I'm going to start off with my bottom piece. So I'm going to start layering things up. If you're ready to put flowers and leaves in there, this is kind of how we'll go through that. So I'm starting off with my bottom, my first piece of cardboard, and my first parchment piece. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, since it's folded, I'm just going to open it up so it's ready to put my leaves and flowers in. So I'm going to pull out some examples here and just talk about ways to kind of layer it to get some really nice press, right? So to start off, you want something that is super, super fresh. The fresher it is, the better. And the reason for that is when flowers start to and leaves start to dry out, when they start to get old, they get brittle. And then you run the risk of when you press it, they break instead of like just get pressed, flattened. And so you want to make sure it's fresh. So I went out this morning and picked some things in the yard and just put it in a little cup of water. Now, when you do that pressing, you want to make sure that your material is as dry as it can be, right? Naturally, our nature material is going to be have moisture in it, right? But we want to make sure we get out as much as we can before we put it in here. Sometimes when you're doing the flower pressing, if there's a little moisture like on the stem or anything, sometimes that invites mold, things like that. Not usually. So when we do our flower pressing, we want to wait about like 2 to 4 weeks for the pressing. You can kind of take a peek at it, look at it. I like checking on it. But to be completely dry, generally it's between 2 and 4 weeks. If there's a lot of moisture in the air, sometimes it takes longer. If it's really dry outside, the air is really dry, it'll take less time. But to start off for my flower press here, I'm going to talk about leaves. So I've got one example here is from a little potted plant I have outside. I just kept it in some water. It's just one single leaf. So what I'm going to do is just kind of press it in my paper towel to dry it since I had it in some water, just giving it a little press. And then what I can do is lay it down. Now, when I do flower presses, usually the side that I want to see, I put face down because then I can kind of arrange it well. And so for this one, I'm going to put it face down and just kind of lay it there. You can put several pieces of nature material on your wax paper. It doesn't have to be one per wax paper. So you can kind of set it there, leave it sitting. I do want to talk about how to do something that has multiple leaves here. So if you have a really large flower press, you can press this all at once, but you don't have to. A lot of times when you have big pieces, whether it's big flowers or lots of leaves, you want to separate them to press them. And once they're dry, you can put them back together. The truth is, like when the flowers and leaves, when they dry, when we use them for art making, no one's going to know that they were separated. And so separating them sometimes gives us the best press, right? And so what I'll do here, because there's a little bit of an overlap, there are a couple things I can do. So I'm just going to go cut it off here. So one of the things I can do, I'll move this one really quick. One of the things I can do is put it face down and then just kind of spread it out to make sure that everything gets pressed. And so I've got my finger here. I'm just kind of adding a little pressure to make sure that it is like spaced out. And then I can put my layer on top and then add my cardboard. And while I'm working on pressing my flowers, I want to make sure that this is kind of weighted down. So I'm just going to use like a little piece like that. Now you don't have to do it all at once. You can separate it. So for this one, if I want to press, if I don't want to have it like dried, spread out like this, if I want it to look more natural where it's overlapping, you can do that too. Let it overlap like this so it's not spread out, and that's okay. But you can also separate it and then just put it back together once it's dried. So what I'll do is just kind of set them out so they're spread out, and then I can put my cardboard piece back together. So that's how to do multiple pieces. I'm going to lay this leaf here. So what I'm going to do here is because this one is a little bigger than my square, all I'm going to do is just kind of pull off some of those leaves on the bottom. So then it fits. And again, just with like flower pressing, I'll generally like kind of try to find a way to lay it out so it's face down. And then I can add my flowers in, my other pieces. And then again, add that cardboard. Now, flowers, sometimes flowers are really hard because there's a lot of detail that you want to kind of get in, right? So if you have something that looks like this, there are a couple ways to do it, right? So one, you can make sure you have it pressed down. Like again, I always put things face down. I just feel like I have more control about how it'll look. So what I can do is do it face down like this, where the stem is pointing up, and then carefully bend it so it's sort of flattened like that. So that's one way to do it, and that'll give you that opening. You can also, and I'm going to remove the stem when I do that, kind of press it face down and then bend it, or you can just press it where it's flat like this. So the thing to think about is, do you want the open surface to be seen, or do you just want a side view? And if you do want that open surface, what you can do is just put that face down, spread it out, and then carefully press it so it's flat, and then put that on top. So the next one I want to kind of talk about is when you have something that looks like this, where there's a bunch of little pieces. I don't know what this is either. It's just one I found on the fence. But it was really cute because it has this little like purple star with the yellow inside. So when you have something that's big like this, you can just press it all at once, or you can take the little pieces off and press them individually. So I have here just a little like garden shears. So I'm just going to cut off one of those little flowers and I can press it face down. Okay, so it keeps that star shape. You can also, like I said, pretty easily, I'm going to just kind of cut that, press it all at once. So it's like this. You don't have as much control over the shape when you're pressing it all together. So that's one of the things to think about too. When you're doing that pressing, what's most important? Is it just capturing that color? Is it capturing them all together? Or is it really capturing that shape? And there's no wrong way. Whatever feels good to you really is okay. But once you do that, then you can press it. So to do the last one, flower, I want to talk about doing something that has a lot to it. So something like a rose or a peony, something like this. It's going to be harder to do. You can flatten it all at once. Just put the whole thing in your flower press and cover it up. You can do that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But again, one of the things that you can do is pull some of those leaves off, dry them individually, and then when they're dried, you can kind of rebuild your flower. The truth is, either way is good. So if I want to do it individually, piece by piece, I want to be very careful and just kind of gently pick those petals off. And again, put them face down. So it's being very careful with how we pick them. This one is a little harder to do only because it takes longer. You don't have to do it this way, but this is one way to get all the pieces and have like a full bloom. You can do that with something that's full like the peony or a rose. Now, pulling off individual pieces like that, or you can just take it and put it face down like this. And I always cut off the stems when I do it. You can put it face down like this and let it dry that way. So if you do that, it's folding that wax paper over, putting that cardboard piece on top, and then that last top. And you can see, like when you first put it on there, all your flowers and leaves, you'll feel that it's not quite flat or secure, and that's okay. As it dries, you can tighten it too. So what I'm going to do is just start off with 2 rubber bands, holding it in place, giving it that kind of tight squeeze, and then that's That's good. Maybe in a couple days, I'll come back and tighten the rubber band. So it does have that tighter, more secure hold. Now, again, doing a flower press like this, it'll generally take 2 to 4 weeks, and it's all depending on the weather. So just as a reminder, for our flowers and leaves that we're pressing, you want to get the most fresh or the flower and leaf at its freshest. When it's in the process of dying, when it's at the end of its vibrancy, it dries out. And then it gets brittle. So you run the risk of breaking your flower or leaf before it dries. And then after it dries, I mean, I guess it's brittle too, but in the drying process, you want to make sure it's the freshest. And then you want to avoid things like blemishes. When we're pressing flowers, we're spending a lot of time like thinking about what we're going to do with it, like art making or, whatever we want to do with those pressed flowers. I usually make something with it. And so I want something that is the prettiest. If it has like malformed leaves or anything like that, I'm okay with that too. But you'll start noticing that areas are drying out or it's like turning colors. Those may not be the best ones to press, especially if you want to use them for an art making process. There's nothing wrong with pressing them, but that's one thing to kind of keep in mind too. And then when you're doing large flowers like the peony or the rose, you can pull those petals off, dry them individually, and then when it dries, put them back together. Or you can just like kind of hold it face down and press it that way. Now, if you are doing the whole flower, the whole bloom of the peony or the rose, it will take longer to dry than when it's laid out individually. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind too. So that's how to kind of set up our flower press and get it started. Of course, I know we didn't cover all the different leaves or flowers that we can add to our flower press, but just kind of talked over some tips. Now, there are other ways to press flowers, and I want to just kind of talk about that for a second. One of the ways is to press them in a book. And this is probably the way most of us have done it, if we've done it before, just pressing it in a book. So you want to find a book that is pretty heavy, pretty sturdy. And so I'm going to use my 30,000 years of art because it's nice and thick. And so this is a good one to use because it's a big book. And so if you are doing it in a book, you can just find a page and lay your natural material in there. However, if you put your flower or leaf right in your book, some of the color is going to transfer to your book. And so one of the things that you might want to use instead is some of your wax paper or watercolor paper to kind of put in there. So you're still putting your flowers or leaves in your book to press, but you're using that wax paper to protect your book from any transfer of pigment. And then once you have your flower leaf in there, you can close your book and let it press. Or you can do like a stack of books too if you want to do that. That also works. This is really great because most of us have books, whether you have like a encyclopedia or a pile of books, you can use that. So it's like a really accessible, you don't have to build anything for it. Again, the thing I want to emphasize is that if you are pressing flowers or leaves in a book, make sure you have that wax paper or parchment paper or watercolor paper so it protects the pages of your book from the pigment of the natural material. And then the drying time is kind of the same, about 2 to 3 weeks for drying. And you can always kind of check on it too. It doesn't hurt the material to kind of take a peek. Now, another way to press flowers is in the microwave. And this may not be one that anyone has done before. It's not the most ideal way to press flowers, but it is kind of a fast and dirty way to do it. So if you need like flowers for a project and you're like, oh no, I didn't have time to press it, this is one of the ways you can do that by putting it in the microwave. Now, the tip is to use something like copy paper or printing paper. We want to make sure whatever we put in the microwave is like microwave safe, right? So taking a piece of that copy paper, and we can add natural materials on top of it. So what I can do is kind of let's say, lay my leaf here. I still want to make sure when I'm pressing it, even in the microwave, that I'm putting it face down. because that helps kind of get that overall like face, that overall look to it. But I'm going to actually fold it in half, make it a little easier here. Yeah. So I've got my leaf, I'm putting it face down. I've got my printer paper here. And now what I can do is take a piece of paper towel or napkin and just kind of put it on top, right? It's a way of kind of holding it down, but also kind of protecting the leaf from like curling up while it's in the microwave. Now, once you have your plant material on your copy paper and your paper towel on top, then you can microwave it. And the thing to keep in mind is microwave it low and slow. So you want to do about 20 seconds to start, and then check it. And then maybe 20 more seconds, and then like 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds. You don't want to do a whole lot all at once, because this is a very fast process. Okay. And the total time will take less than a minute to do the pressing. So like I said, it's a fast and dirty way. Not all plant material presses well in the microwave. So if you're doing something like the peony or the full peony or rose, that won't do well in the microwave. You'll need some pressure for that one. But individual petals or leaves work really well in the microwave. And one of the things you want to keep an eye on with the microwave is that you want to like keep checking it and making sure it doesn't burn, which is why we're doing those small intervals, 5 second, 5 second, 5 second. So you want to make sure it doesn't, we're not cooking the natural material, we're just heating it up so it flattens. The last way I want to talk about is pressing your natural material with an iron. So to do that one, we're going to pull that wax paper or parchment paper out. I'm using parchment paper for everything today, but what you can do is take that parchment paper, again, doing that kind of fold, lay your natural material there, close that parchment paper on top of it, and then you can take that iron on low heat. You don't want any steam. That moisture is not good when you're trying to do that pressing. But once you put that in between the parchment paper, then you can iron it. Usually I have like a washcloth or a little hand towel that I'll put on top and iron it so the iron is not touching that wax paper. But you want to just kind of do quick swipes with it, and that'll press it. That's another kind of fast and dirty way. Not all plant material works well with an iron, but something that is flat, like a petal or a leaf, does work well this way. So all that to say, this one is fast and dirty too. So we can press in a flower press. That's my go-to way. I love doing with a flower press, and I have several of those. You can also do in the book, but you want to make sure you have your parchment paper still sandwiching that natural material when you stick it in the book. And then the two kind of fast and dirty ways to do it that don't work for a lot of plant material, but will work for flat material like leaves or petals, are either putting it in the microwave for a couple seconds at a time, or using an iron for just a couple seconds. And both of those ways are less than a minute. So that's kind of a real quick rundown of flower pressing, creating a flower press, and kind of talking through some tips and other flower pressing tricks and processes. Well, thanks for doing some flower pressing with me today. This is always so much fun to think about these different art supplies that we're kind of bringing in to this process. Foraging for material is a lot of fun. The truth is we don't have to pay a lot of money or buy expensive supplies. We can use the things around us to have some fun creating for sure. So
don't forget, like and subscribe so you can be notified about our future videos.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Happy pressing, nature pressing. Bye, everyone.